If I'm not mistaken, you're running against Sue Tibbs for the House of Representatives. Now, I'll tell you, I'm so glad that somebody is running against Sue Tibbs, because last time I was down there, I'll give you an example of what happened. She wasn't in the office, but her legal assistant was, and I was wanting to voice my opinion concerning her not allowing some of our Second Amendment legislation to even come out of committee. She didn't even want to give it a chance to be heard and for us to be heard. They called security at the Capitol on me for doing nothing more than trying to state what I wanted her to hear and to have the lady write it down. And they didn't even have what it took to tell me they were calling security until they had done it. So it gave me I now kind of watch over my shoulder, as I'm talking to some of those people down there, because I found out that they're not all real nice folks, especially if you disagree with them. So I'm really happy that Aaron here has chosen to run against Sue Tibbs, because she was was in total opposition to the point of not allowing our Second Amendment rights to even be heard in committee, much less come out of committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron here, and he'll tell us a little bit about himself and why he's running for office.
Well, as was said, my name's Aaron Latham. I made a decision, I guess it's been last week. Let me tell you first briefly about myself. I grew up in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, graduated from Broken Arrow High School in 1994. My family still lives my parents still live in the same house over across the street from Rhema Bible College. My first job was throwing the Daily Ledger in Broken Arrow. My wife and I moved to Skiatook after getting married in 1997, and I worked in law enforcement during this time for about 7 years before going into the private sector, and I moved to Oklahoma City to open up an office for the firm I was working for. In Oklahoma City, through a series of events, I ended up working in the Capitol complex for the Attorney General's office, I'll just say it, and as an investigator in workers' compensation fraud. Through this time, I was able to see exactly, for lack of a better term, and I don't want to say corruption, but the how far left people are in Oklahoma. It makes me cringe sometimes to hear people say, well, he's a Democrat, but he's a conservative Democrat. Well, that's not what I've seen. Maybe they're conservative in order to get elected, but not in other areas. So in Oklahoma City, we lived there. I got involved. I became involved in politics. So, I had a shift in worldview concerning the idea of government and the different factions of government and which role certain governments play, because I believe there's several forms of government. There's self-government, there's family government, church government, and then civil government. Civil government being the weakest and with less decision, less input, and I believe that's what our founders saw. Benjamin Franklin said, you hear the story about him leaving Continental Congress and what kind of government did you give us, sir, the lady says, and he says, a republic if you can keep it. And there's a reason that he said if you can keep it. Kenneth Rice spoke on it briefly, and so did Nathan, is that there's a moral problem where we don't support things on the left or sometimes on the right unless they benefit us. And that's what we've got to get at the heart of. A return to the Constitution, a return to the 10th Amendment. Why is this important? Well, because I can guarantee you that if I stand during a speech, I will not hold up a special interest card and say, I'm not voting for this, or this isn't important because this special interest group says it's not. I will hold up a copy of the Constitution and say, I'm voting for this because this is what it says. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. That's it. End of story. No regulation, no gutting. This is what the Constitution says. Now, I don't need the Gun Owners of America to tell me that, although I support them. I don't need the NRA to tell me that it's okay to support something that the Constitution, that our founders said was a right. And I believe it's a God-ordained right, and a God-ordained right of self-defense and of property defense. And that's where I think when it goes back to that, and that's the base that is laid out from God. This is my right of self-defense, my right of self-preservation. Then it's the end of the story. So what encouraged me to do this is when I called her office continually, or I called the office continually and said, well, this isn't right. This is what the Constitution says, but this is a good idea. And I think that is where government's gone astray, is we've become a nation of whatever seems good at the time, or an overreaction to an event that takes place. We immediately say, we need to do this, but that's not right. We need to go to these rights that are protected. Do we sometimes suffer? Yes. I don't think it's the role of the government to determine or to pass laws on my thoughts or on what I'm going to do. There are other things that are passed in Oklahoma that I wouldn't agree with, that I don't think that are constitutional, and that what scares me about it, especially working at the Capitol, is that Oklahoma seems to become a nanny state. We need to tell you every move to make. We need to tell you those little things that you can do and can't do. You need to do these regulations. Here's a list of, and when you look at the list of statutes and laws in Oklahoma or the Constitution, it's amazing. It's amazing when the founders just gave us a few sheets of paper. And so I support the Constitution. I made the final decision last week. This is my first public speaking engagement on this, so I'm sorry for being less than prepared. I found out a couple of hours ago that I was going to be here, but I'd appreciate your support, prayer-wise, and because this is it's an important race, I think, because I don't think it's enough to say, well, she's more conservative than the guy on the left, or the person is more conservative than the guy on the left. No, we just got to return to the Constitution. That's it. And
Thanks, Aaron.